chaos a little bit. People were doing a good job trying to set up for everybody, but what it's going to result in is like too much distance. So what I want you to do is you're sitting in a cushion, fill in forward as much as possible. And then if you're in a chair, grab your chair and come forward. And then maybe if on the sides, people tuck in a little bit, so chairs can also sit on the outer side. It's no fun if the chair's sitting right in front of you, but if chairs can be kind of on the side and the back like that, then I think we'll all fit a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a couple of chairs up here.
Too much. Nobody takes no thing.
Coffee right here, there. People want to come closer.
Joanne, could you take the edge off of this light right here a little bit? And then we don't need those lights. Yeah. The lights that are on the bottom. Yeah, you can turn those off and then turn those a little bit and turn these down slightly. Up. Are the middle ones up all the way? Are those up all the way?
Yes.
Okay, so this one, could you turn it down just a second? Can anyone see like that? Is that gonna make you sleepy?
No.
Those are just kind of like hitting my eyes. The inking. Could you grab the inking? Start with the sutra opening verse. Sutra opening verse. The answer that profound and wondrous are you all. It's a nice crowd. Does everyone have a text? Everyone got that? Okay. And just like some logistic things, there's a lot of us here. If you and you may be very used to sitting on the ground, and you may not be so used to sitting on the ground. And partway through, you get uncomfortable. Please feel free to move to a chair if you need to go to the restroom or whatever. We're used to sitting in this hall and making an effort to be still for long periods of time. And during the lecture, if you do that, you might just stiffen up, and then the words won't go in your head. So try to relax a little bit. And if you need to move around, like I can see that there's many people's faces that I can't see. So if you're in that situation and you want to be able to see and move around and embrace the chaotic truth of being a human being a little bit. Just to make sure you're in the right place, if you thought this was the racquetball lesson, they're not. This was a first lecture of 9 lectures centered on a text central to this school of Buddhism called Jiji Uzanmai by a teacher named Menzon. And so each Thursday will be very similar to tonight. We'll start with a period of Zazen, and then there'll be a little bit of shifting around to get ready, and then the lecture will go for an hour, a little bit over an hour, and I'll do my best for us to be done by 8:30. And then people could stay to clean up quickly, and then hopefully you'll be able to be in bed by 9:07, depending on how far you live away. If it's best to make as many classes as you can, and just in the sense that there's a continuity between them, but of course that's difficult sometimes. So if you can't, just keep up on the reading if you can, and each week I'll say, next week these are the sections that we're going to be looking at. If you're not here, it's hard to know what that would be, except that Joanne, you'll see she's got the Celestial Demon box open. So she's making recording, and that will be posted. We're going to do our best to get that up on Fridays, so that if you miss a class, that you can go to the website and just look at the posting for this class. It's underneath activities. There's a little place that says activities, and you click on that and it opens up. And then if you find this class, we're going to post the links to those. And so you can have time to see them. If you don't see them up, it can be helpful to email the office or let someone know. Sometimes we intend to put them up and something goes haywire and they're not there. And then if no one tells us, we don't know. And then sometimes we just don't get around to it or we forget. So you're not bothersome if you email and say, hey, is there going to be a link up or something like that? That's a good heads up for us here. So you can stay caught up there. I'm not sure exactly what we'll do about when I'm drawing things on the board. Maybe afterwards we'll try to take some pictures and put them up, or maybe if you're listening, you just won't get the visual cues, which I don't think will be a huge problem. Anyway, as far as housekeeping kind of stuff, is there anything else that comes to people's mind that should be known? Okay. Great. So let me start out by talking a little bit about why I chose this text and who Menzon is. Menzon Zuiho was a very important teacher within the Soto Zen school out of Japan. So I think most of you know that Buddhism originated in what we call India, although I hear there's some discussion about changing that now. That's like the colonial name. So some other possibilities. But anyway, in the what now is kind of southern Nepal, northern India, that was the area where Shakyamuni Buddha lived. Buddhism flourished there, and then traveled from there to many other countries through Tibet, through Kashmir, into China, Korea, Japan, down into Vietnam, another wave that came down through Southeast Asia. Actually, all of like Malaysia and Indonesia and all of those areas were Buddhist for some period of time. And now Buddhism, of course, has then traveled to the West, here in Oregon, throughout North America, South America, Europe. There's some Zen centers in Africa. It's really all over the world. But our particular stream comes from Japan, and the school is the Soto school. So the Soto school was, we could say, founded in Japan by a monk named Dogen, who is quite famous now. He traveled to China, and he received Dharma teachings from his teacher, Nyojo Zenji, and then when he returned to Japan, he brought that Dharma with him and established the Soto school. Interesting fun fact, he refused to call it the Soto school, right? He refused to talk about it in that way. And that's something that's interesting for us to think about. It's kind of an easy reference to say Soto school or say things like Zazen as if we know what those are. And a lot of the teaching, both Dogen's teachings and Menzan's teachings, are trying to disabuse us of the idea that we know what those things are, and that the knowing of what those things are is a kind of limitation to the actuality of the Dharma that is presented there. So Dogen brings this Dharma to Japan, or we could say he learns how to recognize the Dharma, and he comes back to Japan and he recognizes it in Japan. He begins to teach, and then there's a lineage that comes out of him. We'll talk a bit about lineage today and throughout different parts within the text, but lineage just means there's a successive generations of teachers that are responsible for the Dharma. So Dogen, just like Dogen received the Dharma from his teacher Nyojo, Nyojo received it from his teacher, who received it from his teacher, received it from his teacher, and that's come down till today. So if someone is a lineage holder, it means they can trace their lineage back. If any of you have received precepts, then you had some teaching about that lineage and how it is that you're joined to that lineage. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because Dogen established a lineage from 1200, which is when Dogen lived, to the time of Menzan, which is like the 1700s, so 500-year period. The lineage just moves along and it develops, and there's all kinds of ways of practicing. Dogen actually isn't a very important figure in people's minds in that whole time, that 500-year period. Right? He's the person who brought the lineage from China to Japan, but he doesn't remain the kind of like bright figure that he is now within our school. And this is one of the reasons that Menzan is so important. That Menzan in the 1700s, he's a kind of reformer. He's a kind of, I like to think of him as a revitalist. He's like the tent revival version of, like a Soto Zen tent revival version. He's like, we got to put up the big tent here and we got to get clear about what this teaching is and about what our practice is. And in that process, he does very, very thorough study of Dogen Zenji's teachings. And at that time, they're all manuscripts. They're all like written, and there's all kinds of different versions of them, etc. And Menzan is kind of the consummate scholar monk, and he reads an enormous amount, and he studies and he teaches, and he advocates for this return to Dogen's Zen. And the Soto school at that time becomes a school that is really focused on Dogen Zen and the study of Dogen, and a kind of, there's a movement that he's part of, which is called like returning to the ancient ways. And what he's advocating is returning for the way that our school's supposed to be, the way that Dogen brought it from China. Now we can all see that in some, that's all kind of a little suspicious in some ways, but it also becomes important. It's like becomes the real basis of what we experience today through our lineages. All of the lineages of Soto Zen now have been really deeply affected by this advocacy that Menzan and his cohort had for saying we need to study deeply, we need to understand what the Zazen is that Dogen was advocating, because it's not what most people think Zazen is. Right? Most people think of Zazen as a technique for accomplishing the task of awakening. They're using it in that way. And Menzan says this is total misunderstanding. And so we need to study closely what the origins of our tradition are so that we can get clear about what the practice is. Now, Menzan had many, many writings. He was, famous for having, over 100 books that he wrote. Most of them are concerned with monastic regulations and monastic life or monastic practice. So those don't get as much airtime, but he also wrote commentaries. He collected works of Dogen and made collections of those.
And then he also wrote for the edification of all kinds of people. So this text, Jiji Uzanmai, is reported to have been written to be used to teach all kinds of people about Zazen. And what I mean by all kinds of people is it wouldn't have just been limited to the monks that were studying with him at the temple where he was abbot. It was a broad swath of people that he was advocating and teaching Zazen to. And so that's really good for us because the language is not simply couched in the symbolism or some of the approaches that would happen within the monastic cloister, but there's a broader kind of exploration of it, which is helpful to us. So that's the that's the text that we have here. Again, he's advocating for a deeper understanding of what the origins of our school are and why those are important, and that all has to do with a better understanding of what the practice is that we're that's being advocated. And so that's why Menzon did what he did. And why did I choose this right now? Part of it is because I taught it like about 20 years ago when we first started this temple, and it was a hoot. And I thought, gosh, we're going to teach this autumn. And I thought, oh, I've been thinking about doing Menzon again for a long time. And so I was just kind of into it. So it was just kind of on that level. But if I try to justify that in a more thorough way, Dogen says in the Bendowa, he says that the wondrous Dharma, which has been transmitted generation after generation, is nothing other than the upright sitting of Zazen. And this wondrous Dharma has a criteria, and the criteria is Jiji Uzanmai. So he says it that clearly. He says this wondrous Dharma has a standard, and the standard is Jiji Uzanmai. That he doesn't say that kind of thing about it so often, like a very clear pointing. If you want to understand what this Dharma is that I'm talking about, you should understand what Jiji Uzanmai is. And although he refers to Jiji Uzanmai a lot in his writing, there's this text by Menzon where he's written the whole text for the purpose of exploring what Jiji Uzanmai is. And so that's why I think it fits well. We want to get clear about what the meditation practice that is being advocated here at Budai Temple is, then Jiji Uzanmai is a good thing to read. So I will warn you, just like Dogen, Menzon writes something that seems very confusing right from the beginning. This is Dogen's style. If you read Dogen's teachings, like in the Shobo Genzo, the Treasury of the True Dharma I think that's the way you translate it. If you try to read a fascicle, the first thing you read, you'll just go, I have no idea what this guy's saying. That's the quality of of how he introduces things. And then as you read the text, you might get some clues to what it is that he was talking about. The reason I'm bringing this up is because it's very easy to get frustrated when the first thing you read, you kind of want to be led in a little bit, like, let me explain the terms, and so you can, and then you read like the first paragraph of this, which we'll do here in a second, which seems very esoteric and kind of like, why are we studying this? So I want to go through it tonight pretty thoroughly, and don't worry too much if it's kind of bending your mind around and you don't totally understand what I'm saying. Part of that style of writing, the purpose is to throw a big or deep idea out and to kind of hang it there, and then to go around that idea again and again and again from different angles and different approaches to help the understanding flesh out. It's a different approach than the kind of, okay, I'm going to explain it to you approach. Like, okay, I'm just going to have a very thorough explanation. I'm going to start out with all the building blocks and then put it together. It's more like put the thing out there and then revisit it again and again and again, like that. So that's kind of what's going to happen here. And please